St. Anne's Convent, Mangalore, would like to speak on the aspect of trusting in God's providence. Most of the time I claim that I fully trust the Lord, and yet I doubt if God is really there for me every time. Doubt is the opposite of trust. When I do not submit fully to God, I will always be doubtful. I doubt because I have not really accepted that there is a God who is mightier than I am. I doubt because I do not accept my limitations, frailties, and inefficiencies. I doubt because I want to be in control of everything. I cannot just let go and let God rule my life. When I follow the Lord, I have to put my full trust in Him. I should not be afraid of the big waves and strong winds that come my way. My faith will always be tried and tested by different circumstances and situations in my life. Once I believe that God is the only source of all goodness in my life, I must enter into an active faith in God. To have an active faith means that I allow my belief present in my intellect to move also into my will and ultimately my desires. Only when I make a free choice to let God take over my life, then God enters into my life, guiding me day after day in accord with His holy will. Living such a life of radical trust produces good fruit in life and prepares me to both to receive and distribute God's mercy. Trusting God completely is not something I can do on my own. I must do my part, and God is the one who takes control of my life and enables me to be transformed into a person who is guided by His grace. To offer further clarification, we shall speak of an analogy.
I have a seed in my hand. I know that this seed has a potential to grow into a beautiful flower if planted and cared for. However, the seed cannot achieve its potential unless it is actually planted. Planting alone is not sufficient. It must also grow and bloom before it achieves its potential and beauty. I can plant the seed, nourish it, and care for it, but I cannot make it grow. The growing is something that God does by His providence, that He has instilled into the nature of the seed itself. So is it with trust. I must trust that God also is a source of all goodness, but unless I actively surrender to Him day after day, moment after moment, allowing Him to take control of my life, then my trust is like a dead seed waiting to be planted. Total surrender is like placing the seed in the ground and allowing God to take over, bringing that seed of trust to fruition. If I do my part, God will do His and will bring His grace into full bloom in my life. To cite another example, consider a person who encounters the hardships of a year of struggle after a serious car accident. During the long stay in the hospital, this person may be given to despair, to doubt, and to get angry. However, at the same time, if he is open to the grace of God, he will hear a gentle invitation from God, calling him to trust him more deeply. It is during these moments that the person must make a choice. Should I entrust myself to the grace of God and accept his invitation, or turn to self-pity and resentment? My total trust becomes a response to God in moments like this and transforms hardships into glorious blessings. Therefore, no matter where I find myself, there is a great value in responding to the invitation from God to entrust my life to him and to embrace his most holy will. There is great freedom in trusting God. When God is in control of my life, the heavy burdens of anxiety and worry disappear. One who trusts in God is not tossed and turned by the turmoil of life. Rather, he will be at peace no matter what comes in his way of life.
Having understood the meaning of trust, we would like to speak about our own founder, how she has placed her complete trust in God in times of trying situations. Venerable Mother Veronica, who took the risk of obedience at all times, is a great example for us to follow because of her unshakable trust in the goodness of God. She, convinced of his unfailing love and faithfulness, even in the midst of difficulties, continued to hope, knowing that ultimately he would bring good out of everything. She was not spared of either interior anguish or exterior suffering. She remained faithful, experiencing his power to bring his purposes to their end in his own unexpected way. Even in the foundation of the Apostolic Carmel, when all her hopes were shattered and all the circumstances of the situation pointing to the ensuing dissolution of her venture, God used the most unlikely instruments to carry out his purposes and brought them to successful completion. Today, the very existence of the Apostolic Carmel is a testimony to the love, the power, and the fidelity of God's providence.
If we turn the pages of the Scripture, we have plenty of such examples. We shall enumerate some of them. We find various faith-filled persons who trusted completely in the providence of God. We marvel at Abraham's ready compliance with God's call to leave all his securities, to venture into the unknown. His rootedness in God led him to transcend the innermost urges of his human love for his son and to carry out God's behest to sacrifice him on Mount Moriah. It was a courageous plunge into the darkness of God's will, a helpless and total reliance on the goodness of his Creator, who seemed to ask the impossible of him. At the climax of his terrifying surrender, God's providence saved him in a wondrous manner. We have a great example in the life of Jesus himself. When he was tempted in the desert, he preferred to rely on divine providence in spite of his suffering. He turned to God in faith and trust. Man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. We have another beautiful example in the life of Mary. She also reveals her unshakable trust in providence when, at the Annunciation, she blindly surrenders to God's will. Behold, the handmaid of the Lord, be it done to me according to your word. This utter reliance on divine providence is characteristic of Mary throughout her life, coming to its climax at the foot of the cross, where the victory of redemption was obtained.
As I continue my faith journey, may our founder, Venerable Mother Veronica, be a beacon light to teach me to trust God in all circumstances of my life, trusting that God who brings life from death, victory from failure, hope from despair, light from darkness, good from evil, may be with me to carry me across to my destination.
The Lord suffices, is a more to truth.